नमस्कार कार्यक्रम रूपान्तरणमा तपाईलाई स्वागत छ। हामी आजको रूपान्तरण कार्यक्रममा महिला प्राकृतिक विपदको कारणले गर्दा भएको विस्थापन र विस्थापित महिलाहरूमाथि हुने हिंसाको बारेमा कुराकानी गर्छौं र आजको कुराकानी अंग्रेजीमा हुनेछ। Hello, greetings on behalf of Rupantaran TV show, and today we are going to talk about the issue women, displacement due to natural disaster and violence against this displaced women. To talk about the issue, we have invited two guests who are involved in a research work that is carried out by NCCR, a leading Nepali research organization in collaboration with Portsmouth University of UK. Let's welcome our today's guests. To talk about the issue, we have Professor Dr. Tamsin Bradley, University of Portsmouth. Tamsin, I would like to welcome you in this TV show.
Thank you.
Likewise, we have another guest, Dr. Basu Subedi, Senior Researcher at NCCR. Welcome, Dr. Basu.
Thank you.
Dr. Tamsin, could you please tell me about your research area and experience in Nepal first?
Of course. So by training, I'm a social anthropologist, and I've worked in South Asia for many years now. So I've been to Nepal many times. This is the second big research project that I've been part of in Nepal. The first project was looking at links between women work and violence. And so this project really develops on from that project with its distinct focus on displacement and how that feeds into instances of violence against women. So during the first research project, I met Vishnu, director of NCCR, and from that point we've developed this very successful research partnership, which has brought me back to Nepal for this work.
Okay. Yes, in Nepal there are lots of issues to be researched. Why
Indeed.
have you selected these particular issues under your research project?
So I've worked on violence against women and girls for many years now, well over 18 years. And the reason why that's the focus of my research is that globally we've not really seen any massive or big reductions in rates of violence. If anything, we can see increases, and that's really concerning in terms of trying to achieve the sustainability goals around social and gender equality, but also just for issues around women's rights.
Your university has started same project in Myanmar as well.
That's right, yes.
Why?
Because it's also important to build up that comparative context. It's important to understand the extent to which we can understand violence because of the particular, for example, political, economy and cultural and social factors of a country. But also we need to understand how certain lessons, for example, lessons in Nepal around what might work in terms of reducing violence, might be transferable to other contexts where violence is also a really big problem.
Dr. Basu, you are proactively involved to carry out this research. Could you please tell me briefly about the research project here in Nepal first?
And yes, you already mentioned the research topic, that is natural disaster, displacement and women violence. We are talking about this. And in this study, focus has been given to the flood and earthquake affected family and community, specifically in Nepal. And in the case of Myanmar, we are focusing on flood affected community. And we are trying to compare the finding of Nepal and Myanmar by the help of this research. And in the context of Nepal, we conducted research in Sankharapur municipality of Kathmandu district, and where they were affected from the devastating earthquake of 2015 and displaced, and so many families are sitting in the cottage, temporary cottage. And in the case of
they are displaced people.
Yeah, they are displaced people and sitting in temporary cottage. And in the case of Morang district, and they are affected from the massive flood of 2017, and they were also sitting in temporary cottage, and they are facing so many problems, and we conducted research in specific these two areas.
It means your study geography is Kathmandu district and Morang district, yes?
Yeah. Kathmandu and Morang. These are the two study districts.
Yes, and what is the sample size?
Yeah, and from Kathmandu and Morang, Altogether, we captured 880 households, 50% from Kathmandu and 50% from
All are displaced people.
Yeah, there are two definitions of displacement here. One is displaced and sitting in the temporary cottage.
Temporary cottage,
yeah,
okay.
That is one
locality
type of
may be same,
yeah,
but their house
yeah,
may be temporary.
yeah, temporary.
Yeah.
And another group, that is, we can say the control group, and this control group affected from the natural disaster, but they are sitting in their original home.
Home, okay.
These two set of respondents or household we have taken in our research.
It means, do you want to compare the people displaced due to different disaster, that is flood and earthquake?
Yeah, that is not the intention. That is not the intention. But we try to capture a different variable of disaster.
Variables. Okay,
Yeah.
that's fine. Dr. Tamsin, I would like to ask you another question. University is generally taken as a research institution as well. So higher education naturally requires the research and analytical knowledge production as well. In your opinion and experience, what is the importance of research work in university education?
So research really is at the heart of what universities do, and I can't stress that enough. So I think research, it's not just about generating new knowledge and understanding about the important issues that affect all of us, but also research has to drive teaching. So teaching at university is really about pushing the boundaries and about teaching our students, particularly in the social sciences, pushing our students to really critically engage with the world. And to equip them to be able to go out and be knowledge generators themselves. So part of what they are learning is how to conduct research. So it's really important that therefore they are taught by people who are, as we term it in the UK, research active. So they are themselves generating this new data and new evidence through participating in different research project. So it's absolutely critical.
But if we observe the university, I am taking the reference of Nepali universities, we are very back to mainstream the research work in university as a learning process. Do you agree?
I think that's a challenge everywhere. So, I mean, even in the UK context, we have this, there is tension between research and between teaching, and quite often lecturers can feel torn because class sizes are large, because the demands of being able to actually deliver university curriculum can put time constraints in terms of then also being able to conduct research. So I think this is a problem that impacts on Nepal, but impacts on other places, and that's really the space that's given to understanding the value of research and having respect for what it is able to do in terms of really, pushing students to think differently, as well as I know we'll come on to talk a little bit about the importance of research for driving policy, programming, development in general.
If we can't link the research findings or research knowledge for the betterment of public or student or target peoples, it's just become a technical work. And
Yes.
Research naturally it seems very dry work as well. Yes, it's my personal experience. Why we aren't why we are not becoming successful to link these research work in university levels, one thing. And do you think we are leading the research work as dry activities, academic activities, in especially developing countries like Nepal?
I think there's different types of research. So I don't do dry research. I think research needs to be applied. That's the term that we use. So by applied research, it means research needs to be focused on answering the questions that, as we again term the stakeholder community, need answering. So in the context of Nepal, it's critical to have communication and relationships with civil society, with government officials, with international organisations who are at the forefront of essentially implementing programmes and strategies to see Nepal move in the direction in accordance with the sort of strategic vision. So research needs to feed into and generate the evidence and the understanding that can really support that process. So research can't just happen in a vacuum. It has to happen alongside ongoing discussions with the people that should be using that research. So in part that's the student bodies thinking about how that data can feed into and inform curriculum. So in the last project on women, work and violence, we actually created a mini course using that data that can be used at university level but also across different stakeholders, and we will do the same with this project. So that's one way of making research seem useful and valuable and demonstrate that. And then secondly, it's really a question of listening to what we're told in terms of what stakeholders need answers to, and then making sure that we go back and present our findings in a way that's accessible, because I think that's the problem. And
yes.
Academics are not always very good at doing that.
Right. Yes, you are collaborating with Nepali Research Institute and Myanmar Research Institute to conduct this research. Do you share, or how do you use this knowledge or experience and finding in your university, that is University of Portsmouth?
My university, okay.
Yes.
So the evidence, the research that we generate through this project, again, it feeds directly back into teaching. I teach courses on gender, I teach courses on community development. We have a master's course. The master's course will also now be using the online materials that we've generated, or will generate from this project and have from previous projects. So there's a direct feeding back in, and that's really important because essentially students in the UK who study development, one of the key outcomes in terms of their learning needs to be that they go away with what we call a global mindset. So they need to understand how development plays out in different parts of the world, but ultimately how we're also all connected. So it is that process of feeding back in is important.
Are your student interested to learn about the finding in a different country like Myanmar and Nepal?
Yes, very much so.
They are interested?
Yes. The particular students that choose to do international development, which is my degree course, are students who are interested in the world. So it isn't difficult to get them engaged in very specific pieces of work such as this, work in Nepal.
Dr. Basu, what is your methodology to carry out the research?
Yeah, to conduct this research, we used the mixed method approach.
Mixed method.
Yeah, we try to compile the quantitative as well as qualitative approach in this method. And in quantitative approach, we try to capture the information by using the survey method, and by in the qualitative method, we try to conduct key informant interview, focus group discussion, as well as other naturalistic observation information. And by using these two type of data, we try to blend the research finding. Yeah.
Now, are you ready to share me the key findings of your research?
Yeah, why not share?
You have your...
Yeah, I already told you in our survey there were 880 respondents, and one important question in survey, there was one important question about the knowledge or awareness level of the respondent regarding what is human violence. And regarding this, one very interesting and encouraging finding we found, 90% respondents were found aware about the women violence.
What is the science of making this kind of ratio, 15% male and 85% women? Because male, male makes the violence against women. So, so I'm asking these questions.
Very good question is this. Pathologically, we try to capture the opinion of the women only, but if we try to capture the opinion or perception of the male, that becomes fine to analyze the research. So we do not use specific sampling strategy to choose what percentage of female and what percentage of male, but to get the opinion of the male, we use this specific volume of male sample.
Okay. This 15%
Yes.
is sufficient,
Yes, sufficient.
to know their opinion. Yes. Okay. 90% women are aware of
Women and
the
men.
male are aware of the violence
Yeah.
against women. Yes. What kind of violence are facing by this displaced women?
Yeah, more specifically, they are facing physical violence,
Physical.
different sorts of physical violence, and they also facing the sexual violence like unintended sexual intercourse, forceful sexual intercourse, as well as other so many psychological type of violence as well.
Okay. Who makes that violence?
Yeah, this one is a very important question. More specifically, we found that out of 880 total respondents, 70% respondent reported that the husband of the family,
70%.
yes, 70%, yeah, husband of the family was the key perpetrator of that particular violence, yeah, and followed by the mother-in-law.
Main violence maker are family members.
More specifically,
Tamsin,
we are
why
talking about the domestic
from-
violence.
yes,
Violence.
from
Yeah.
sociological and anthropological point of view, why this happens?
So we know globally the category of intimate partner violence is the most prevalent form of violence. And in terms of understanding why that is, we have to look at power dynamics at household level. And those power dynamics, those relationships are fundamentally gendered. So we have to dig in and understand issues around women's inferiority, lack of decision-making power within the home. We also need to, as society changes and as concepts of gender equality start to make changes at that level, we have to recognise that often there's something called a backlash. So that means that as women may be able to access income, they are able to influence decisions because they are earning an income in a way that they wouldn't before, that there is a reaction to that. So family members become challenged by that. So the reaction sometimes can be a violent one. So we have to understand these figures within that context. In relation to our research focusing on displacement, I think we have to acknowledge that these communities are highly vulnerable.
Okay.
They are marginal communities and they're suffering on a regular basis high levels of stress and tension. And in those conditions, we also see an increase in violence within the family because those tensions are played out through aggression and through anger. The reasons why that anger and aggression focuses around women, again, is because of the positioning of women as inferior to men. I mean, that, put simplistically, that is the reality of why we see these statistics.
Yeah.
No.
It means if violence happens or if violence attacks them, that is injustice.
Yeah.
Yes, that is injustice. They know.
Yeah.
But 70% violence is made by their husband,
yeah.
and how much by the mother-in-law?
More than 22%.
22%. Plus 22%
Yeah.
violence is made by their mother-in-law.
And remaining other percentage, other family member.
Why don't they resist?
Yeah.
React?
And it is very difficult to, yes, in our culture, it is very difficult to resist with the husband and with the mother-in-law. That is a tradition, yeah. We respect husband, we respect mother-in-law, and they do not tell more thing to their husband, to their mother-in-law.
It means traditional value system is standing as a barrier. Yes?
Yeah. And another important thing.
Can you generalize these findings in other women as well, or it can be only limited within the displaced women?
No. In displaced as well as non-displaced, that means they are affected, but they are not sitting in the temporary category. In this case, we found that another statistical data I want to share with you.
Okay.
Out of 720 married women, 36% married women told that they were facing the physical violence by their husband and mother-in-law.
What is their support-seeking behavior during that violence time?
Yeah, regarding the support-seeking behavior, we talked about the support-seeking part, and the affected women, they told that the family member, that is the first option, another family member. That is the first option, to seek the support. And then to take the support, they try to go with their peer group. These two strong agency, that is the means of support system.
Dr. Tamsin, yes, you have invested great efforts and invested lots of resources to carry out this wonderful research. Yes, if you don't link the research finding in policy, research is limited only its academic and technical work. Yes. To give the benefit and dividend of research finding to the public and to the victim of violence, we have to intervene our policy based on the research evidence. In this case, how do you make your argument that there is a strong relationship between research work and policy making?
Researching a topic that's as sensitive and controversial as violence against women, there are many ethical issues around conducting this kind of research. And in order to justify essentially asking people to talk about experiences that are deeply personal and often viewed as shameful, that needs to be justified in terms of using that data to bring about change. So there's a responsibility to the respondents, essentially. So therefore, it's an ethical imperative to make sure that that data is then communicated effectively to those stakeholders, those policymakers who are in a position to be able to respond to it. So as I said before, from the beginning of the research process, building those relationships is really critical, and making sure that that communication with them is ongoing, and then really thinking carefully about how best to communicate those findings back to the people who are best placed to use them. So writing academic articles, we will do that, but actually that's not the format that most stakeholders want to receive the findings in. So thinking about how to communicate appropriately through shorter briefing papers or through doing media pieces such as this interview today, all of these approaches are important in terms of making sure that we communicate the key messages back.
Okay. Principally, do you agree there is a strong relationship between policy making and research work?
There should be.
There should be.
There should be, yeah.
You have worked with NCCR, a
Yes.
leading research organization here in Nepal. Why are you working with NCCR in Nepal?
Because, NCCR have a very strong reputation both in Nepal but also internationally. The relationship with NCR and the University of Portsmouth began many years ago when the director of NCCR, Dr. Bishnu, was an advisor on a previous project. So I approached him and asked him if he would be willing to be a partner on this new project, and he agreed. And the partnership has worked really well, and that's absolutely critical, particularly for UK or foreign institutions trying to do work in Nepal. It's important to have an in-country partner who can be trusted, who we know will deliver high-quality research.
Nepal is a naturally disaster-prone country. Some reports have shown that globally Nepal is ranked in 4th position in climate change vulnerability, 11th position in earthquake vulnerability, and 30th position in water-induced disaster vulnerability. Yes. Out of 3 disaster having high vulnerability, you have chosen 2. Yes, earthquake and flood. Yes. Can we generalize these findings in other disaster-related displacement?
That is very critical question. It is very difficult to generalize the finding in most of the cases. Our sample is not so big. We have taken 80 respondents. And in generally, we can generalize it because the nature of the violence and nature of the other phenomena, we can find the same. So in general, we can generalize it.
What is your experience and what is your opinion regarding this finding and linking into the policy?
Yeah. In the context of Nepal, in my understanding, there is not the debate of policy issue regarding the women violence and women related issue here, and we have a strong legal framework in our constitution.
Okay.
We have fundamental right related to women here, and while reading the fundamental right in our constitution, there is specific fundamental right, and where there is stated, I want to read in our provision in the constitution. Here it is written, no women shall be subjected to physical, mental, sexual, psychological or other form of violence or exploitation on grounds of religion, social culture, traditional value, and other so many things. And we try to identify the integrated approach. How do we minimize this sort of violence in the particular community?
Okay. Dr. Tamsin, Dr. Basu has just shared with us the major and key findings of the research work. Same research work has been taking place in Myanmar as well. What are the comparative perspective regarding the research finding between these two countries?
So it's still early in terms of the analysis of the Myanmar data, but I think that we can already say quite confidently that rates of violence against women are also very, very high in the displaced context we've been looking at there. So when communities are under stress, and displacement obviously brings great stress, then we see these spikes upward in violence. We will also find that the forms of violence, in particular that women suffer from, map quite closely to the Nepalese context. And all of that is reinforced again by what we know globally. But what the research is able to give us is a really contextual understanding of why displacement has this kind of impact. I mean, we've talked about the link between alcohol and male aggression. I mean, there's another question that we need to sort of ask, that is that alcohol consumption increases at times of stress. So there's kind of a causal link between these behaviours.
Research finding is one part. Another part is how to reflect the finding in our society for the betterment of human society, human being, yes? In this context, do you think the strength and competencies of research organizations play a great role to translate that research finding in our society that can lead the transformation? So, what is your experience?
So the relationship between evidence, data, evidence, policy, practice, transformation, I mean, that's a long chain of things that have to be in place. But right at the beginning, but they're interrelated. But at the beginning of it, you need to have and have generated really rigorous data. You should not be making policy recommendations based on flimsy data. So working with research institutions that have the capacity to generate that rigorous data is really important as the first step.
Okay. Dr. Basu, last but not the least, what may be the further initiative to utilize in optimum level that research finding that can minimize the violence among women?
It is not only the time of honesty and integrity. It is not only the time of action and activity. It is the time of result and performance. How do we get the result? How do we make change? That is the question. And to make a change, we should go the specific field. We should share the finding with the field members. We should develop the functional program to change to address the problem. So for that, it is essential to integrate the agency who are related to particular problem, and we should link the finding with them, and we try to develop the integrated approach, and then we can change it.
Thank you very much for your time. I highly value your time and opinion in what you share, lots of experience and findings of your research. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
दर्शकवृन्द यही कुराकानीका साथ आजको रूपान्तरण कार्यक्रम यहीँ टुङ्ग्याउँछौँ। अर्को हप्ता फेरि तपाईँ हाम्रो भेटघाट हुन्छ। आजलाई बिदा दिनुहोस्। नमस्कार।